Hello and welcome to the Pandaverse. I'm E,
I'm C.
and we're joined today with Joanna Vandervlugt.
That's
I think
good.
that's how you pronounce it.
That's good.
Yeah, I have some Dutch relatives. Joanna and I had an experience recently. I was on her show, so I asked her to come on our show, and we're both authors. Joanna lives in the Vancouver area. I think you're out on the islands, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. And we have a lot of authors at Panda Moon that are Canadian, and some of them live in the Vancouver area.
They do.
Yeah, so big happy family, just keep growing.
I'm jealous. You all have poutine up there. Best food ever.
You know,
Give me some. I'll be waiting.
it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I really started to like poutine.
Really?
And then once I had it, a really good one, I was in. Okay.
I'm so in. I used to live in Tillsonburg in Ontario.
Okay.
So moving from Ohio to there and having, the poutine and all the other great, wonderful things there, the milk in the bags. It was such a wonderful experience and I miss it so much. I'm just gonna have to vacation when the border opens.
Yes. Yes.
One day. I can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, my big experience was living overseas or living in another country was when I was in the military. I was in Korea, and I like the idea that you could buy a meal for the equivalent of about a quarter. Yeah.
And it's a good thing we can't buy meals for a quarter here because I would never stop eating. You know that, Elgon.
Yeah.
Um,
Joanna, let's hear about your book. It's called The Unravelling. It's not to be confused with the Panda Moon book, The Unraveling of Brendan Meeks. It's also a good book. It's a crime mystery, but it's got paranormal elements in it. It's got a little bit of everything. It's a wild ride.
yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, wrote it originally about 20 years ago, and it was when I worked at the prosecutor's office. I have my heroine. What we also have in Canada are called ad hoc prosecutors. So when we don't have enough prosecutors to prosecute a crime, we can hire a lawyer who's experienced in criminal work to prosecute. So I wanted to show that. So my heroine, Jade, her ex-husband gets accused of murdering an actress, and she defends him. And after she defends him, he wants to try to warn her about, because she's gung-ho. She's going to go for a promotion. Her successful defense of her ex-husband is going to get her up that ladder. And her ex-husband wants to warn her that things aren't so rosy at the top of the food chain. So she goes to this lavish party, and that's where she finds her ex-husband murdered. She then decides she has to figure out what's going on. Like, what was he going to warn her about, that someone then murdered him? I like chase scenes, so it was fun taking my favorite places in Victoria and having chase scenes, we have a lot of history, so going down old alleys. We have a Chinatown. It's not as big as San Francisco's Chinatown, but it's second. Okay. And it was neat to have chase scenes going through Chinatown. And what Jade realizes is that her colleagues who she trusted, she can no longer trust. And it came about because it was based on not reality, but what blew me away at the prosecutor's office and working with lawyers is that our lawyers could go into court and they could prosecute these incredible crimes, and they'd come back And as soon as you mentioned Law Society, which is the society that overlooks lawyers, they'd be like, and I thought, okay, I wonder if I can work with that. So what happens is Sage then learns about a society, and they deliver their own vigilante justice. Okay. And it involves police, lawyers, judges,
Yeah, it's
everybody.
a huge conspiracy.
Yeah. It was
Ooh,
it was just so much fun.
that
Right?
sounds so intriguing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you forgot to mention that the main character's sister is in an all-girl motorcycle gang.
And that originally, when I wrote the story 20 years ago, that wasn't part of it. And the crazy thing is I took a break from writing. I didn't anticipate 20 years, okay? But life kind of happened. I used to do a lot of art as a teenager. So it was through my art, illustrating motorcycles, and for the longest time I kept thinking, why can't I illustrate what everybody else illustrates? Why can't I do flowers and gardens and pretty things? But there's something about
Motorcycles are pretty.
well, yeah, well. So it was working, literally when I went back to it in 2019, I had just such a vague idea what the story was about. So I read it again. It was, my mother had passed, and there was just, I thought, let's look at this, because she was a huge supporter of my writing. And I read it again, and I could vaguely remember the story. So what was neat was my editor, she said, can you bring Sage more into the story, the sister? That's when I decided, okay, let's, like, the art kind of merged with the writing. And I thought, okay, Sage is this very empowering sister. She's going to have her own motorcycle gang. And both of them, Jade and her, both ride bikes. And it's I think it's really cool.
That
Yeah,
would be so cool.
one of the friends I had in grade school, she's got her own Harley, and her and her husband ride. They go on trips all the time. She lives in Kentucky. They go up into the Appalachian Mountains and take road trips and things like that. So it's interesting. My brother-in-law rides. I've driven a motorcycle before, but I'm not licensed for it.
Yeah.
But my brother-in-law was teaching me. My other brother-in-law was teaching me how to ride a Suzuki water-cooled motorcycle back in the 70s, I think it was. I mean, it was cool, but it was also terrifying
Okay.
because I'm like driving it and he's riding behind me,
Okay.
and he taps on my helmet and
Oh.
like that, and I look down at the speedometer and I'm like, I'm doing 100.
Elgon.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my. I've only been on a motorcycle one time. It was my brother's. It was a Harley night train. And they have the bar on the back, so like you can sit and not fall off. We didn't have one. And my brother is a very large man. He's 6'5". He's like probably close to 300 pounds. And I'm pretty petite. So when I got on the back, I can't put my arms around him. So I'm holding on to his, like, the sides of his shirt, and he starts going down the road, and I'm like, I'm gonna fall off. I'm gonna fall off. So it's like the scariest thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah. Well, I've ridden on the back of one, and the fellow I was with, he's a lawyer, and he would warn me whenever we'd start to speed up. And where I used to live, we have these, long, I don't want to say country roads, just roads in the wilderness. And it was really cool. It was great. And like you're holding on to the front, and I was just like grinning like an idiot. I'm glad I had a helmet on. No one could see me.
Yeah, we just had Ohio Bike Week here last weekend. So there were hundreds, if not thousands of bikers up our way. So that's only about 10, 15 minutes. So they were doing bike rallies. It was pretty neat.
So I got to ask, are you one of these people when you hear the engine, you're kind of,
I'm actually really used to it. Yeah, because I'm actually from a village, a really small little village. And down the street, they had one bar. And the bikers would go to the bar. And so at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, you'd hear them rev their engines and go right down the street and wake us up. So I got like used to it. But I tell you what, there's so many pretty bikes out there. So now when I hear it, I'm like, hey, hey.
yeah.
So.
Yeah. I know my sister looks at me like, bikes? I'm like,
Bikes.
One of my cousins, when I was growing up, he lived like a couple of houses down. I mean, Christine's been in that area, so it's at the next intersection, and then it's like one house up from the intersection. My dad owned that house and rented it to tenants, and it happened to be my cousin was renting it. And he had a motorcycle shop in his garage, and he did custom bikes for people. And, you know, and on the side, he also worked at International Harvester in Springfield, and he did custom choppers. This is back in the 60s. He was the first person. I don't know if he invented it, but he should have gotten a patent on it if he did. But he was the first person I ever saw that put a sissy bar on the back of a bike, you know, to keep people from falling off.
It's my safety bar.
And I think it was something that his wife wanted, you know, put on his bike so that she could ride with him and be a little more comfortable with it. But yeah, I mean, I grew up around motors. I mean, it's the reason I don't ride motorcycles and I don't own one is because my mother was deathly afraid of motorcycles, and she like put that fear in me.
Elgon, you look so cool on a motorcycle, though. I mean, you get
I would. You know, I totally look like a biker dude. You know, I mean, I got the ponytail.
Look at your ponytail.
Yeah,
He's perfect, just flapping in the wind.
I'd have to get tatted up a little. And,
I can do that for you. We can make that happen. That's right. Me and Joanna are going to start our own biker girl gang.
Yeah, that'll be cool. We'll call ourselves the Pandas. Pandas Biker Group.
Yeah.
That'll work. So what's next, Joanna?
Well, I'm working on edits for the sequel, Dealer's Child. It's looking late August, early September. I'll be releasing it. I'm busy with the podcasts. You know, I have to say thank you because I checked my last analytics, and 49% of my listeners are American. It goes,
wow.
Yeah,
There you go.
49 American, 45 Canadian, 2% UK, and the other, I'm trying to do the math here, and the other, whatever makes up the rest is like spread all over, right? So thank you to the American listeners. Like I've had Tony Olivier, right, on the podcast.
Yeah, he lives in your area. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had Benny Sims. And so
yeah, Benny's funny.
Yeah, he's coming back on. I got him to come back on. And Penny Jones, and just recently Jewel Selbo, she'll be coming on.
Maybe
so
Christine Gabriel.
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Christine Gabriel, that would be pretty awesome. I'd want to read your book for sure.
I hear it's okay.
Yeah, it's won a couple of awards, you know.
I'm going to get your book because I think your book sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
It's very well written too. I was impressed with it. I don't want to say it's not my genre because I end up reading a lot of books that way. My books have some mysteries in them because all books have mysteries in them. Because I mean, you've got to have something going on in the book that people have to discover. You know, all books have some romance and things like that, other elements in them. But I haven't been a mystery reader, a crime mystery reader. But lately, that seems to be all I'm reading. So,
But I like the struggle. And, Jade's my heroine, she's dealing with some stuff. And that's what I like, is the struggle, like, yeah.
Stronger.
Yeah, like we're not supposed to be nice to our characters, right?
Right.
Dealer's Child's coming out in September. I really appreciate what you said, Elgon, about the writing, because sometimes I feel, you're an indie author and it's like I'm preparing, like in 2 weeks, I have, his name is Bill Morrison, and he's a marketer, and he's coming on the podcast. And as I'm preparing the questions for him, I'm thinking about marketing. And sometimes I swear I feel like a humpback whale breaching, because you're trying to market. So I'm really glad he's coming on the podcast. He's been approached, by, believe it or not, he let me know that he was approached by American political analysts about the election. He's been approached by our own levels of government about marketing. So I'm really interested in what he has to say, because I feel like as an indie, you don't have the backing of some of the big publishing houses out there. You're trying to make your way, through like that sea of really good novels out there.
Trying to rise above the noise.
Yeah. Thank you. So, yeah.
Yeah, Christine and I spend most of our time working on marketing, I think. It keeps us away from writing a lot of times.
It does.
I mean, I think Christine uses it as an excuse, but
Not a lie.
yeah. I mean, it took me about 25 years to put a first book out. It's a frightening thing. You're exposing your soul to the world. There's elements in your book that tie directly into your own personal experience, so you're really close with them. And as much as you try to conceal that, people who know you are going to say, "Oh, that's so and so," or "Yeah, that's what happened, to him 5 years ago."
Yeah.
So they're going to relate to those things that are in the book. You have to get to a point where you just don't care.
Yeah.
You just don't care what people think.
Yeah.
And so, for me, that took about 25 years.
I know when the Unravelling came out, my spouse said to me, he goes, "So how does it feel knowing your book's out there?" And I go, I looked at him. I said, "Now everybody knows what a warped mind I have." Right?
Exactly.
All my little demons, they all know now. Like
most of the people who know me know that I was a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had somebody come into my store the other day, and we were just talking shop, and he was telling me how he had seen some pretty severe crimes. And then we got on the topic of writing, and I said, I have committed some pretty serious crimes. And he asked me, he's like, "Well, what crimes have you committed?" I said, "Well, I kill people, but I kill them in print." His eyes got real big, and I was like, "But it's legal that way."
Yeah.
He was just like, his mind was blown. He didn't know what to say. Like, is she crazy? Is she okay?
Yeah.
Well, people have already long since decided that I'm crazy. So my dad used to always say that people get into their pants the same way, regardless who they are, and I kind of followed that. But I think that it even goes beyond that. Everybody has secrets that they keep, things that they don't want people to know about. And as an author, you try to conceal your secrets a bit, but you're also exposing them to the world for everybody to see.
Yeah, and judge and
Yeah.
see they see a whole different side of you. They see that deep inner part that you've probably held in for so long.
Yeah.
It's a very intimate thing.
Everybody's got a touch of darkness in them,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, these are things that you think about, when you're alone, when you're writing stuff, you have weird ideas. You have some warped ideas. What kind of torment can I put this character through? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I've had some of the people that have beta read my stuff have said, "Oh, you're being too easy on this character," and I'm like, "Just wait." You haven't got to that point yet. So.
It's just a couple more pages.
Yes, a couple more pages.
Then you come back and talk to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Christine, you're the title of your book?
It's Crimson Forest is the first book. Crimson Moon is the second, and then the next in the series will be Crimson Tears.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and I'm still thinking on the fourth and final book, but
yeah, I've suggested Crimson Underwear as the title for that one.
yeah, but I don't know how well that would go over.
Completely different vibe than the other three. Maybe Crimson Eyes.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought just crimson, just like a finale, just. But I don't know.
Crimson with a blank line.
Blank.
Fill in your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, her book's about a forest, of course, that has crimson moss in it, and the forest kills people.
Oh.
I tried to base it on a lot of legends and myths that are real and that go way back since the beginning of time. I like being able to intertwine reality and fantasy, so that way, I chose a real place with real forest. That way, if people wanted to go and adventure, they could. They walk into that forest, and the forest where this takes place is actually, it's got quite some heavy legends in it. So one day I'm gonna go visit for myself.
And
I'm gonna take Elgon with me. He's my body.
She has some scary violence going on in the first chapter. So
Ooh.
I mean, it gets started quick.
Well, I'm going to have to get it.
And she has a snarky vampire.
I wasn't gonna have a vampire. Listen, that's when like Twilight and the Vampire Diaries had come out, and so vampires to me were well overplayed. A good friend of mine asked me if I would write a book about vampires, and I told her no. So she kept asking. She's a really good friend. I told her I would write her a book, but I wouldn't write it with any vampires in it. So I wrote Crimson Forest, and as a surprise for her, I included one snarky vampire who ends up being everybody's favorite character. I don't know why.
He's a vampire that lends comic relief to the story. So
He's an a-hole.
Isn't that interesting though? Because I know I have this one character, Norman, from the first one, who, he goes down a rough path. And with the second one, my editor is saying, do we get to see more of Norman? And I'm like, okay. So, you get the edits back and okay. And it just blows my mind that you can write about a character and how the dynamics of the story just changes, right?
Oh my God.
And then I've got this other character where, is she going to come back? And I'm like, okay, she's going to come back, but I'm at the point where I'm like, I can't handle all of them coming back. So like you said, Christine, someone is dying, right?
Someone's gotta go. Who's gonna be? Here's the straws. Like, pick one.
Because I'm done, we gotta move on from these guys.
Yeah, we're revealing too much about the creative process to the readers here.
We are, guys. We're gonna have to censor this show because we're giving away all our secrets.
Yeah.
That's okay. We can share. Everybody can listen. You're all invited.
You're all invited. Well, what was that thing Robin Williams used to do? Check out my mind.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody wants to check out my mind. They might be afraid. No.
It's pretty messy in there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like a TV that's constantly on.
Turned up too loud.
Oh, every day. So Joanna, where does your inspiration for writing, like where does it like come from?
The first book, The Unravelling, that came from working in the prosecutor's office. And 20 years ago, indie authors weren't, I'd say, looked upon with as high regard as they are now. Okay. Like I used to obey all the rules, but now I'm just like, I'm writing the story. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what we were being told, I don't want to say, so from this side of the border, what I was reading with submission guidelines was that if we wanted our book to be successful, we would need to have like a place, a location in the US. And part of me was like, I go to Maui, but how can I write about a city as a visitor? You know, I mean, it won't ring true. Like
Right.
where you live, me visiting where you live is going to be a different experience than you living where you live.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so odd because, you know, a lot of the Hollywood industry is in Vancouver
Yeah.
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 and
Yeah.
and Toronto.
Yeah.
Toronto's the other big one in
Yeah.
Canada because it's less expensive to film up there.
Yeah. Yeah. So originally this story, I thought, okay, I can see some of the differences were, for example, like you said, Elgon, we have sheriffs in our courtrooms where you have sheriffs who are police, like a form of law enforcement,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was making sure I explained that our sheriffs in the courtroom, they escort prisoners, you know, and we have a prisoner dock where they, you know,
Yeah.
prisoners go. So I thought, you know what, I have to write this. I want to show the Canadian justice system. So that's where this first book came from. And honestly, the ghost aspect of it was not originally wasn't in the original draft. The ghost aspects of it came when I went back to rewrite it and reread the story to think if there was something actually. I remember I thought, okay, I'm going to read this book and I'm going to see if there's something salvageable in it. And I forgot actually, Elgin, how the murder victim died. Okay, I totally forgot. I remember reading it thinking, oh, you must have been a little ticked off that day, right? You know, okay, you know. So the cool thing was when I sent it to my editor, she was saying, she goes, why is it important to the story to mention that there is another law office, that this law office has another branch in Seattle? Like it's not moving the story forward, but it was because of what I had been told 20 years back, right?
Oh,
So
right.
out went the reference to Seattle, right? When I finished this one and I launched it, I told myself, okay, I know there's a second because I like you two, you three, everyone at Panda Moon, we love writing, okay? And the job I have now, I used to be able to walk. It was a 25-minute walk from my home to my work. And that's where I started thinking about the next book, that walk. And, you know, I hate to say it, whenever friends would kind of bump into me on the road, I'd be like, why are you talking to
Exactly.
me? You know, right?
I'm in a hurry.
Exactly.
You know, it's like, I've got Jade on the bridge and, you know, I'm trying
Yeah.
to decide whether she's going to jump in or you know, or run for help, you know, and it's like, you know what that's like.
Yeah. People, you know, normal people don't
Yeah.
understand that about writers.
Yeah.
You know, when we seem to be quiet and moody and grumpy and everything like that to other people, it's because something's going on. You know, something's playing
Yeah.
out in our head.
Those wheels are spinning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you find, like, I'm curious to find out, I'm not a plotter. So I'd get a scene in my head I'd get home and it's like, typing madly before you lose it, right? Before it's
I'm the same way. I can't fly. I cannot have
Yeah,
a storyboard. I
yeah,
just put
yeah.
fingers
You
on.
gotta have your characters explain the story to you.
They tell
So
me the story.
yeah, and then when you go back, when you're doing revision number 5 or revision number 3 or whatever, you can put an outline to your story and
Yeah.
move things around in it.
Yeah.
But writing it in a storyboard, like the police crime scene storyboard thing, I can't do that. And it limits my flow, my creativity. I know some people, there's authors of Pan the Moon that have very detailed storyboards to create
Sticky
everything,
notes,
and they can't start writing until they have everything figured out. That amazes me. I can't write. I've tried writing that way. I can't.
I can't either.
Like I did it once. I remember I went chapter by chapter. I plotted it out. I got to the end and I thought, okay, I know what's happened. I don't want to write this anymore. I know what happens. I'm no interested in writing a story.
It needs to be some discovery. There's a guy that works with our authors on their audiobooks. His name's Mike Eberhardt. And he was explaining the process of his creativity because, an audiobook can be just reading the story, or it can be brought to life by somebody actually performing it and acting it out. And that's what Mike does. And Mike will only read like a couple of chapters ahead in the story because he doesn't want to know how the story ends.
Yeah.
Because
so great.
Yeah, and it's it's a good method for him to do, and he doesn't know how the story's going to end. He's just like a reader.
Yeah.
He's just like, and a lot of our books, I can tell you, a lot of our authors, they don't know in chapter 2 or 3 where the story's going. They don't know in chapter 10 where it's going.
Yeah.
It's a process of discovery.
It really is.
My first book with Pan the Moon, the ending changed on it 3 times, after it was even in editing. Yeah. And there were minor changes. It didn't really considerably change the ending, but I suck at writing endings, and that's why I write serials. The story just keeps going on and on and on because I'm not good at writing endings. I came to a point in that story where, a lot of the plot elements had been resolved, or actually all of them had been resolved at that point. This is a good ending. And then I was on the 3rd revision of it, and I read it, and I'm like, I don't like that ending. Yeah. And as a writer, you can do that. You can change the ending. When you're watching a TV show or a movie or something, you don't like the ending, you can't change it. You can't do anything with it. I hate that.
Yeah.
And, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, it'd have been such a much better ending if they did this.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
they did that.
You guys do that too?
The people,
all the time.
heaven forbid I take somebody to see the movie with me because they hate it.
Yeah.
They hate it because I'm like, it would have been better if they did this. Yeah. And, there's a plot hole here. There's, and they're like, you ruined the movie for me. Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But
I did that.
There's some sloppy writers,
I did that with my husband with when Star Wars came back.
Oh yeah.
Okay, just about a couple of years back, and he's a huge Star Wars fan, and we walked out of the movie theater, and he said, "So what'd you think?" And I'm going to get hate mail when I say this, and I said, "It was okay," and he goes, "Okay," right? Like, what do you mean okay? Literally, like, what do you mean okay? And it was because I liked, and I can't remember her name now, the female Luke Skywalker and what ends up being Harrison Ford's son. I liked their storyline, and I wanted more of their storyline than all the the
Yeah,
right.
I agree. I agree. It would have been a much better story. It wasn't. The pacing was off. It just wasn't as interesting as discovering, the original, movie, which was actually episode what, 4, 5, and 6. The original movie was so fascinating that you could go back and watch it multiple times,
Yeah.
and you can't do that with the new ones.
No.
No.
And the prequels, they weren't done as well as the original either. But then the last I didn't even watch the last movie of
I
the
have
series.
never.
I didn't,
Not yet.
the what was it, episode 8 or 9 or whatever it was. That was okay. I have the same comments that you did about it. I liked some of the things they were doing. Like, they were putting a lot more emphasis on the female characters, which I thought was really good.
Yeah.
But they're putting in their own little, their own little tweaks and their own little agendas and everything that don't really belong in the storyline. I go to watch a movie to escape.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't go to a movie to hear somebody's opinion on the current American society. It doesn't belong in a movie.
Yeah.
No, a fantasy movie. It doesn't belong, in a galaxy far, far away. They have their own problems.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to tie the political mess that we have into the political mess that they have, that's fine. That makes sense. You can build that into the storyline. I watch stuff on Netflix from time to time, and there's probably about 40 or 50 shows that I've started watching, and just beep, okay, I'm out.
Yeah.
You've both written multiple books. Did any one of your books after the first one seem harder to write, or?
Oh, the
Yeah.
second one's tough. I mean, I just finished the sequel to the first book that Pan the Moon published. I just finished it like a couple of years ago, and really, and honestly, it wasn't finished then because I have another revision that I did to that one. But yeah, that one was really hard to write. But the reason it was hard to write is because there's a lot of other stuff going on in that universe that I had to explore because I didn't understand it yet.
Okay.
You may not be aware that that's what's going on with your characters. You're sitting there staring at, a blank page after chapter 1 and trying to write chapter 2. Yeah. And you don't realize that you have no idea what to do with this character because you haven't written their backstory yet.
Yeah.
And you need to write that book. And it may not even be something you publish, but it's something that you need as an author to understand your characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I learned that from writing a 10-book series that hasn't been published yet.
Okay.
May never be published. Who knows?
Oh, it's going to get published. Stop it.
But the thing is, when I was writing that story, I would change something in the 4th book, and I'd have to go back all the way to the beginning because of the way I write. It's not plotted out, nice, neat plotting and everything else. And I really don't think you could have written the book that way.
Yeah.
Okay. It would have been a much different story.
So Joanna, where can our readers find you? Where are you at? Where can we find you?
Well, The Unravelling is on Amazon. In hindsight, I should have picked a different title because we spell Unravelling with 2 L's. Okay. So if you're looking for it on Amazon, it's The Unravelling with 2 L's. Okay. Yeah. And I do have my own website, which the book can be purchased there. And that's where the podcast is located as well. Okay. So it's just J for Joanna, C for cat, V for Victor, artstudio.net. And that has the Unravelling and, just a little picture of the next book that's coming out. And it has the podcast on there, and it shows a little bit of my art. So next year I get to retire. This is my last year. So what I'm hoping to do is next year is just kind of very quietly hang up my little sign saying, if you need a book trailer or if you need book design, you know, so that I've got to get on my website, you know, and that's with, I call it Aussie imprint because Aussie is my mini schnauzer. Okay.
And I'm amazed he hasn't interrupted this.
He's not in the room.
Oh, there you go.
I thought, this is too important, Ozzy. I'm sorry. You know, not that your podcast wasn't Elgon. You know, I'm not saying that, but it's just like, Ozzy, can I get through one without barking, right?
Yeah,
So,
Ozzy wanted constant attention during our interview.
wow. And the stinker will be so quiet leading up to the recording. And I swear either he sees I get the mic or he hears the other voice that he starts thinking someone's in the room, right? You know, so no, it's jcvartstudio.net. Okay,
Wonderful.
yeah.
And do you have anything to tell, you know, any inspirational, you know, thoughts that you want to share with readers or writers even?
You know, it's going to sound a bit like I'm stealing from Nike, but it's just do it. Just do it. If you want to plot. If you want to just write those scenes down. Another author has mentioned it to me. She goes, write the skeleton draft. That's how she says it. She said, write the story that you want to tell yourself. And I thought that's a neat way of looking at it. You know, she goes, that first draft is you telling yourself the story. She goes, then after you can go back. And sometimes it's even more enjoyable doing the rewrites, you know, when you get to sit and just play a bit, you know, with the words, right? I loved writing as a teenager and I loved creating art as a teenager. And I would say just look back at what you really loved to do, you know, really with anything, but in particularly if you really loved writing as a teenager and wrote stories, just try it, you know, you could surprise yourself. I never thought I'd be one to like illustrating a motorcycle, but I do. Right, so yeah, that's it.
I think that's wonderful. And
Okay.
I think people, you know, they should definitely take your advice because it's very good advice.
You know, and part of me thinks I kind of wish I didn't have that 20-year break, but I was still writing. I just wasn't writing fiction. You know, I was writing small articles, but I can't change the past. So maybe,
Move forward.
yeah, maybe it's just that wasn't the right timing for me, right?
Yeah, everything happens for a reason, I think.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you need to teach yourself how to write. And some people that takes less time than others. Some people it takes most of their life.
Yeah.
You know, you can't force it. And, you know, other than, okay, I'm going to get up today and I'm going to write something. Okay. And then tomorrow I'm going to get up and I'm going to write something else.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to write some more on that. It's kind of like, you know, I've started getting up early in the morning and going for a long walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. And first time I did it, it was okay. Second time I did it, you know, now I'm like 3 weeks into it and I'm like, I got to do this again. But, you know, you've got to establish a routine. You got to keep doing it. And, you know, it's the same with writing. And sometimes the writing, you get to a point where you're writing something and you amaze yourself. And it's like, wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
And you may go back 2 days later and say, man, I thought that was really good, but it needs something else to it. But still, it's a process, you know, and you can feel really good about what you're doing because you're doing something out of your own essence and out of your own creativity. And it's something that's never existed before.
Yeah.
Right.
And
You're the creators of worlds.
yeah. And my critique partner, she and I, we've critiqued each other's work. We've done it for like 20 years. And when I told her I showed her what I used to do as a teenager. And she said to me, just get a small drawing book. She goes, something you can put in a purse or a bag. And she said, just draw whatever. And she said, you don't have to show anyone. This is just for you, right? She felt good when I told her I have to get a bigger sketchbook. And, I could see this little smile. I think she was thinking, okay, she's coming back, right? So, and then she said the sweetest thing to me. And when I showed her my art, she said, I'm mad. I'm mad that you stopped creating art. I'm mad at you for doing that. But you promise me you will never stop creating art again, and I'll be okay. I said, okay, I promise I will never stop. Right. And it was very sweet. And so she has been instrumental in getting me back to doing what I love doing. So, yeah.
She sounds like an amazing friend.
She's from the 60s. So
that's awesome.
I have Jade's mom, who plays a real significant role in book 2. And breaking rules, I write in first person, but I have the scenes with Jade's mom take place in the 60s. So a lot of my inspiration came from Carol Ann, who was a teenager during the 60s,
That's
so
awesome.
it's really neat. Yeah. So,
yeah. All right, guys. Well, I'm so excited that I got to meet you today, Joanna.
I want to get you on my podcast. So
I want to get your book.
Okay. Well, we could do maybe a swap, maybe. Hey.
Totally do a swap.
Okay. Would I be able to get your email address so we could arrange something?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes. I'll put it in I'll message it to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah.
You're a wonderful person. You have a great spirit.
Well, I've had coffee.
Coffee is life.
Yeah, you and Christine are on the coffee. I'm on the water.
2 hours ago, I may not have been the same person. Okay.
Coffee is magic.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you being here. And like I said, you're just a wonderful person to talk to. So, our viewers, please go and get the Unravelling. It sounds like an amazing book. I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to love it. I just already know. So please.
Yeah, remember Unravelling with 2 L's.
2 L's.
And it's Joanna Vandervlugt.
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't know how to spell her name, it'll be in the comments below. And make sure you hit like if you liked our show, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of them in the future. We have some interesting guests scheduled along the line. We have some new books coming out from Panda Moon. A lot of great stuff coming out. So make sure you're subscribed so you can keep up with it and find out what you want to read.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the support.
Oh, you are so very welcome. Thank you for being here.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.